Hello and welcome to the program. December 5th marks International Volunteer Day. It is an international observance mandated by the UN General Assembly in 1985. For Ukrainians, this day has a special meaning. The revolution of dignity and then the war in the Donbas gave a powerful impetus to the development of volunteering in our country, which from a few sporadic cases grew into a powerful civil movement. Now, to talk more about volunteer initiative in Ukraine, we welcome to the studio today Andrij Waskowycz, President of Caritas Ukraine. Hello, and thank you for joining us.
Hello.
So, you are here since now 20 years. It's a lot. You saw the birth and the independence of Ukraine as we know it today. How did the civil society change since two revolutions?
I think, first of all, there was a big development in Ukraine. In the Soviet Union, everything was organized by the state and every civil activity was forbidden. And this was very important because a long time after Ukraine became independent, this categorically, the situation that activities were forbidden had an impact to the people. They didn't do anything from themselves. They looked always to people who will ask them to do something. So I would say there were different developments, but then the biggest outburst of activities was the first revolution in 2004, the Orange Revolution, where people went to the streets. And there was something very interesting because at this very moment also started the idea of sharing, of solidarity. People had to organize a big meeting where people from different parts of the country came to KU, and they had to organize the place to sleep, the accommodations for these people, the food for these people, to take care about everything. And people started to share. I called this the date of solidarity in Ukraine, because before that, everything was organized by the state. Here the people took the initiative in their own hands and started to work for themselves and organizing themselves and sharing themselves with the people who needed their support and help. And then actually
after the Maidan.
Actually the second revolution even deepened this understanding. At the second revolution, we had a situation where the people organized a community at the Maidan, actually a small community at the Maidan, according to these principles of solidarity, subsidiarity, of common good, all these understandings, all these principles which helped to build up a new concept of how society should function. And for me, this was the main idea of the Maidan, to demonstrate, not so much to put away the people in power, but to bring other principles into this society. And this was a very important point for Ukraine, also for the movement of volunteers and for the movement of charitable organizations and civil society generally.
And the volunteers are a fundamental pillar for example, for the beginning of the Ukrainian army as we know it today. They brought them some equipment at the beginning. They brought them. Some people might say, though, that there might be a danger that the government and authorities might rely too much on volunteers' help for that kind of initiative. What's your stance on that?
I think it's not only for the army, generally, for this very critical point, and my organization also started to work in this period very strongly. The first point where the internally displaced persons from Crimea, which had needs and needed help in the situation. So the volunteers were the first to respond to these needs of the people, and they responded very actively. Secondly, when the war started in the eastern parts of Ukraine and the big movements of internally displaced persons, there were volunteers, the first who could actually hinder a big catastrophe which would happen if the volunteers wouldn't be there. The state and even the international community would not be able to respond to the enormous needs which were happening at this moment. I mean, we remember the situation in 2014-15 when the numbers of internally displaced people rised. The people went to the streets and said, we can help these people. The people can live in our houses. This was an enormous solidarity, enormous volunteer movement, and not only that, there were two parts. One helped the people who were affected by the war, and the other people helped the army, which was actually needed the support of the people to defend this country.
Which brings me to the priorities now. You're the president of Caritas Ukraine, which is quite present also near the front line. I'm thinking Kramatorsk and all these places. What are the priorities for Caritas Ukraine for the upcoming winter? Because winter is harsh in Ukraine. What are the priorities for your organization?
There are different programs which we had in last year and in the last years, actually, in the last couple of years. These were winterization programs. The first is the heating system. I mean, the people need the fuel to heat their houses, which is very difficult in certain villages where the people don't have the means to buy the fuel to heat their houses. Then the winterization program foresees also food for the people who can't afford to have the fuel. Actually, many people need need to address the basic needs of these people. That's one problem. The other problem is the people need also support, not only material support. They need people who accompany them. We see the situation in several villages where only old people are left. And if somebody is becoming ill in these areas, they don't have the help which is needed that they can get in a better state. Again, so there is a lot of work to do in the buffer zone, and there is an enormous importance that there are volunteers who help, but there is also an importance that the organizations, charitable organizations, can do systematic work to assist the people, and then there is also the need that the state is doing its part to support these people in this situation.
And to create this framework, because Caritas helped and bring this structure. I talked about Kramatorsk because I remember going there, and we talked to this priest who told us about the different situation and what Kramatorsk and the buffer zone, as you said, went through. How to deal with such situation when you're on one side and the other side? How to be equal in front of that?
I mean, first of all, Caritas is an organization of the Greek Catholic Church. Yes, we are a church organization, and we are working according to the principles of the church, to the principle of Christian love. And we want to address and bring assistance to everybody who has a need of this assistance, and we are doing it. Not looking at who is this person, what is the idea, what is this person thinking, to which nationality this person belongs, or to which race this person belongs. All these questions, we help the people in need. This is our principle. But we can work only at these areas where we are allowed to work, and we are not allowed to work, and we have no possibility now to work on the other side, which is not controlled by the Ukrainian government. So we are working in the buffer zone, and there we are bringing the assistance to everybody who is in need.
Are there any charitable events, any charity events organized by Caritas and who are scheduled by Caritas for the coming winter, where maybe people can come and give?
It's not the event. Our teams are in this area, and they're doing their work according to their plans, which are foreseen for this winterization. What we can do with the means which we have, which we can use to distribute this assistance which the people need in this area.
Now, one of the problem in the humanitarian assistance is also the lack of fund. Last year, an NGO against hunger in the world said it could cut the funds given to the Donbas because people don't give money anymore, and there's no fund allocated for this area anymore. How do you deal with that kind of problem?
I mean, that's the biggest problem. The war in Ukraine is an invisible actually a forgotten war, because nobody was looking at this war until last week, a week ago, when there was an escalation again, a military attack from the Russian side to Ukrainian ships. And then the world started to speak again about the situation in Ukraine and the war in Ukraine. But before that, it was actually forgotten. And it was the humanitarian crisis which is in Ukraine, which exists in Ukraine, was actually an invisible humanitarian crisis. People did not see it. And this is one point. The other thing is that Ukraine has to compete with other crises in the world. There are many crises in the world. And some crises do have more pictures where you see the need of the people. You don't see it in Ukraine. Mm-hmm. You have to see the situation of the people, the needs of the people. You have to go to their houses to see how the people are living. But when you see the needy people on the street, you don't see that they are poor, that they have enormous needs to survive. You don't see how the people are traumatized, how children are growing up with this traumata which they went through. So that's the big problem. And to make build up this awareness for this situation in Ukraine is a very difficult thing. We have to go outside from Ukraine. We have to go address the different governments who can support us. We have to address the different international organizations, and they have to decide where are they assisting the people in Ukraine or in other countries where there is also a need. So we have to do a lot to build up and to raise this awareness, and we have also to speak out what is at stake, that the people are in a very, very difficult and precarious situation.
And now, and to conclude this interview, if one day and hopefully the war stops, do you see Caritas continuing its work in Ukraine? Do you see Caritas being, an important pillar of Ukrainian society right now?
You see, Caritas is an organization which existed before the war, which is working a lot during this war and will exist afterwards. Mm-hmm. Caritas is here and stays here. It's an organization which is intrinsically belonging to the Ukrainian society, which is a part of this Ukrainian society. And therefore, our assistance is also not given in the understanding of humanitarian aid. We are thinking more. We have to, and we are developing social projects to accompany the people in need. And actually, when the war started, I said to my teams, we have to rethink what will be our function in the future. When we are looking at the needs of the people, we have to think about the children who went to the war with their traumata. When you are going to the military hospitals and you see young people without legs and arms, they will need assistance a whole life long. And these are the tasks Caritas has to prepare itself.
Well, thank you very much for coming in our studio to shed light on the role of Caritas in Ukraine. It was a pleasure to have you in the studio today.
Thank you.
That was Andrij Waskowycz, President of Caritas Ukraine. Thank you for watching the program and stay tuned for the rest.